Welcome to the deep dive.
Yeah.
We're all just wading through so much information constantly. So what we do here is take a big pile of it, find the core ideas, and basically give you the key insights you need. Today, we're diving into something pretty huge, potentially world-changing: stellar energy. This is based on the work of Rethink X.
That's right. Our mission for this deep dive is really to unpack what Rethink X means by stellar energy. We'll be looking mainly at their Understanding Stellar Energy report, but also pulling in some other info to, see how it all fits together.
And Rethink X, just for context.
Right, yeah. They're an independent think tank known for looking at how technology disrupts major industries. They focus on these big systemic shifts.
Okay, got it. So let's jump right in. What is this stellar energy idea? What's the core concept from Rethink X?
Well, the fundamental claim is that we are right on the cusp of global clean energy superabundance. And crucially, they say this isn't science fiction. It's being driven by technologies we already have: solar, wind, and batteries. SWB, they call it.
SWB. Okay. Superabundance. That sounds, well, almost too good to be true. What do they actually mean by superabundance?
Yeah, it's a strong word. They define it pretty specifically, though. It's a state where the marginal cost, the cost of producing one extra unit of energy, gets incredibly close to zero. And at the same time, the total supply of energy vastly exceeds what they call inelastic demand. Basically, way more energy than we currently think we need, available almost all the time.
Okay, like an example.
The internet is their go-to example. Think about it. Once the networks are built, the cost of sending one more email or streaming one more video is tiny, right? Near zero.
Okay, I see the parallel. So they're saying energy is going the same way, like a digital revolution, but for energy.
Exactly that. They explicitly draw that parallel. What happened with information, what they call the world of bits, is now happening with energy, the world of electrons. The huge shift is moving from energy based on flows, constantly digging up and burning fuel, which always has a cost, to energy based on stocks.
Stocks.
Meaning the assets themselves, the solar panels, the wind turbines, the batteries. Once you've invested in building that stock of assets, the actual energy they produce, the marginal cost is virtually nothing. Sunshine and wind are free inputs.
Wow. Near zero marginal cost electricity. That really changes things. And they think this means we'll end up using a lot more energy.
Absolutely. It flips the script on energy use. Historically, energy's been expensive, so we've focused on efficiency, on conservation, which makes sense. But Rethink X argues that when energy becomes superabundant and near zero cost at the margin, that whole constraint kind of evaporates. Just like we consume vastly more data and information now than before the internet, they predict humanity will find incredible new ways to use much, much larger amounts of clean energy.
Right, because it'll be so cheap and available.
Precisely. They even have a term for the potential this unlocks: SWB superpower. It's this extraordinary capability that emerges from having all this surplus generating capacity just sitting there.
SWB superpower.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not just about having leftover power, it's about what you can do with it.
Exactly. And they stress that realizing this potential isn't automatic. It requires what they call killer combos.
Killer combos.
Yeah, basically smart ways of using the energy, like co-locating energy-hungry activities right next to massive solar or wind farms, or having industrial processes that are flexible, that can ramp up when energy is most plentiful and cheapest, when the sun's shining brightest or the wind's blowing strongest.
Okay, that makes sense. So that's the big vision. What's the evidence? What makes Rethink X believe this is actually plausible, let alone likely?
Well, a huge piece of it is just looking at the cost trends. Solar and wind power. The costs have plummeted. They're already the cheapest source of new electricity generation in large parts of the world. That's not really debatable anymore.
Right, we hear that a lot.
But Rethink X takes it further. They project that by 2030, which is, not that far away, the economic advantage of SWB will be just overwhelming and unassailable. Basically, the cheapest option almost everywhere on the planet.
Overwhelming and unassailable by 2030. That's bold.
Yes.
What drives that confidence?
A key factor they point to is the nature of solar PV and batteries. They're inherently distributed technologies. Unlike, say, a giant nuclear plant or a huge hydro dam, which needs specific locations and massive upfront investment, you can put solar panels anywhere the sun shines. On a roof, in a field, off-grid.
You can scale it up or down.
Exactly. It works at almost any scale. That flexibility and adaptability just makes adoption happen much faster.
And they connect this to patterns we've seen before with other technologies, that S-curve idea.
Yes, absolutely. That's a cornerstone of their disruption framework. History is full of examples, right? Cars replacing horses, smartphones replacing basic mobiles, the internet disrupting print media. These things tend to follow an S-shaped adoption curve. Slow at first, then incredibly rapid growth for maybe 10, 15, 20 years, then it plateaus at a high level.
And they think energy is right on that steep part of the curve now.
They argue it is, yes. Look at the data. Global solar installations, wind capacity, battery production, it's all growing exponentially. The pieces are moving incredibly fast.
Which brings us to what's happening right now, particularly with electric vehicles and battery storage. How does today's EV boom feed into this stellar energy future?
It's completely foundational. The huge push for EVs is driving massive investment in battery manufacturing. It's pushing down battery costs through economies of scale, and it's building out charging infrastructure, all essential components for the broader SWB system.
And we see certain players really leading the charge, right? Like China in the EV space.
Oh, absolutely. China's role is huge. You see figures about Chinese brands dominating global EV sales. The exact percentage might vary by market or report, maybe 76% globally, or specific to certain regions like Brazil, as some discussions note, but the overall trend is undeniable. Reports from major outlets confirm China's leading position in both sales and manufacturing.
And it's not just selling cars, it's the speed of development too.
Right. The innovation cycle is incredibly fast. People talk about Chinese EV models getting refreshed in like 12 to 18 months. That's way faster than traditional automakers historically. This pushes battery tech forward, improves charging speeds, everything. Plus, they're not just focused on cars, electric vans, trucks, buses. It's across the board.
And their battery manufacturing is key globally.
Absolutely critical. A massive chunk of the world's EV batteries and batteries for energy storage systems, too, come from China. And the adoption rate within China is staggering. Some reports suggest EV penetration hit 50% early in 2025. It shows how quickly this transition can happen.
Okay, so EVs are driving battery tech and scale. What about batteries for the grid, stationary storage?
That's also seeing huge growth. Battery energy storage systems, or BES. You've got big players like Tesla becoming major system integrators for utility-scale batteries. And governments worldwide are putting policies in place, subsidies, mandates, incentives, not just for EVs, but for stationary storage, too. China, Europe, US, even places like Ethiopia are making moves.
And the technology itself keeps improving.
Constantly. You hear about things like BYD's new battery platforms or CATL's Shenzhen battery, capable of adding hundreds of kilometers of range in just, 10 minutes of charging. Ultra-fast charging is becoming a reality.
Which require the infrastructure to match, of course.
Yep, and that's being built out too. Massive investment in fast and ultra-fast chargers, particularly in places like China, South Korea, India. You also see interesting alternatives like battery swapping, especially for smaller vehicles like scooters in Asia, but even being tested for larger trucks in China.
Battery swapping for trucks.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And even more futuristic stuff like electric road systems, ERS, where vehicles could potentially charge while driving. Pilot projects are happening in China and the US.
So all these things, the EVs, the batteries getting better and cheaper, the charging networks, the grid storage, they aren't separate trends.
Exactly. Rethink X sees them as interconnected parts of the same fundamental shift. They are building the technological base, the manufacturing scale, and the infrastructure needed for this stellar energy system to emerge.
Okay, so if we're already building the foundations, what are the big advantages Rethink X sees in consciously accelerating this shift towards SWB today, beyond just, the obvious climate benefits?
Well, the biggest one, the most profound one they talk about, is breaking free from energy scarcity. That's the game changer. Today's investments, often driven by EVs, are effectively laying the groundwork for this future superabundance, and the implications of that are just immense.
Okay, break that down. What kind of implications? Socially, economically?
Socially, think about poverty reduction. Cheap, abundant, clean energy is a massive lever for improving living standards, enabling education, powering healthcare, creating opportunity, especially in underserved regions. Think about health improvements from drastically reduced air pollution. Think about enhanced security and resilience communities less reliant on volatile global fuel markets or fragile centralized grids.
Okay, that's powerful. And economically?
Huge potential. Entirely new business models could emerge. Industries that are energy intensive today, manufacturing, agriculture, mining, data centers, could gain massive competitive advantages by leveraging cheap, clean power. It could reshape the entire economic landscape. And geopolitically, well, Countries that lead this transition could gain significant advantages. It shifts the power dynamics away from fossil fuel producers.
And environmentally, it goes beyond just CO2 reduction.
Oh, absolutely. They talk about near total elimination of greenhouse gases from energy and transport, obviously, but also the near elimination of direct pollution, smog, acid rain, water contamination from mining and drilling, less ecosystem damage. And potentially, it makes things like large-scale carbon capture or other climate restoration efforts much more affordable and feasible because they require so much energy.
Right. It sounds like they see energy as the key enabler for solving a lot of other problems.
That's definitely the perspective. They even talk about an energy bill of rights, the idea that access to affordable, clean energy should be a fundamental right, empowering consumers with choice.
And they have ways to model this. You mentioned a tool.
Yeah, the Stellar Energy Explorer. It lets you plug in assumptions for different regions and see how an SWB system might perform. They've run scenarios for places like Brazil, India, Sweden, showing how their specific solar and wind resources mean they could potentially generate massive amounts of energy, maybe even needing less battery storage than you might think because the resources complement each other well.
Fascinating. So wrapping this up, what's the ultimate call to action from Rethink X? What's the main message they want people to take away?
Urgency. Their core message is deploy SWB, deploy it now, and deploy it at scale. They see it as the most direct route to clean energy superabundance, which they argue is essential insurance against all sorts of potential catastrophes: social, economic, environmental, geopolitical.
And their underlying belief is that if we get energy right, everything else becomes more manageable.
That's pretty much it. They argue that as long as abundant, affordable energy is available through this stellar energy transition, humanity retains the capacity to tackle its other big challenges. Energy is that foundational layer.
It really makes you think differently about, say, buying an EV or seeing solar panels go up. It's not just one thing. It's part of this much larger potential shift.
Exactly. This convergence of technologies isn't just about transport or just about electricity. It could be a fundamental change in the energy basis of our civilization, moving towards near limitless clean power.
Definitely food for thought. What opportunities does that kind of future unlock for you, for all of us?
Yeah,
And of course, we need to include our standard disclaimer. Please remember that we, your hosts, and the producers are not providing financial or investment advice here. This deep dive is based purely on the information presented in the sources we discussed. Any decisions you might make based on what you've heard today are entirely your own responsibility.